So
Yeah. Okay. By the
yeah.
way, it wasn't recording before, so now it is. And this is why we practice
And this is
things.
us.
Okay, hi, I'm Heather O'Leary. I'm here with Ashlie Simpson, and she's with the Ruth team, my preferred lender. And we want to have some conversation about some of the clients that we have both been working with, and also this concept of what happens when you're trying to make a move later in life, or even helping your parent make a move or start making some really big decisions. And so the reason Ashlie and I are here is because Ashlie is a specialist in the reverse mortgage process, and I have a senior resource certification. And so we just really gelled on how to work with people in this really difficult transition period. So I think the first thing we wanted to start talking about is just our own personal experiences a little bit with our own family, and then also maybe jump into what we're seeing with some of our clients. So Ashlie, hi. Good to see
Thanks
you.
so much, Heather, for having me. I appreciate it. So much fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It is. I think we're on a, we align for a good cause, a good purpose here, because I'm finding, as you are, that there's a pretty big need for helping folks navigate this process, whether they're right sizing into something else,
Mhm.
or really just needing to, depending on the stage of their life, not always seniors, but depending on the stage of their life, people are needing to kind of get things decluttered and organized and make way for different choices and different milestones in their life. And I think
Yeah,
that's what we're
yeah.
finding in our clients a lot, is that they need some help with that.
Yeah, or even just people who want to change their living situation so that it's less maintenance,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
no more yard work, just someone takes care of all of the shoveling. I want that
All the
too,
stuff.
actually.
Yes.
I would
Me
like
too.
that too.
my kids aren't old enough yet, but
Mhm.
as soon as they are, there's going to be maintenance free happening at my house.
Oh my gosh, I know. My almost 8-year-old son actually shoveled the driveway the other day, and I went out thinking I was going to help him. And I was like, do it, buddy. Come on, get on it.
Yeah, there you go.
And then he just did. I was very excited.
Amazing. This is great. I
It
know.
was great. It was great. Yeah. So, do you want to tell me? I mean, you have a lot of experience on the decluttering aspect of helping people make this move and like packing and that kind of thing.
Right.
Do you want to talk about a few of those things, like where you come from and your background with
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So I am the oldest in my family, the oldest child in my family, and my parents are divorced. So I have on one side my mom and my stepdad and my grandmother, who's 90 this year, living in one household, and then my dad, my stepmom, and her mom living, who's also 90, living in
Mm-hmm.
their household. And we've had, of course, grandparents that have passed, and essentially I got a lot of the stuff dropped at my house. So that's kind of where it came from initially, where I'm like, what do I do with all of this? And how do you really decipher, like, what is keep stuff, what is like memory stuff, who gets what stuff? And it became this huge ordeal. And so that's really kind of what sparked my interest in this piece. But then as I worked more with seniors, I ended up helping more and more clients, just kind of accidentally, sort of. You've kind of fall into it,
Yeah.
with getting them situated and getting organized and getting cleaned out and getting stuff like that going, when maybe a spouse has passed away and they need to move into a different size home,
Mhm.
or they're just needing to really kind of get a grip on things so they can do a reverse mortgage and kind of have a fresh slate for whatever reason. So there's a whole variety of reasons, but you find that especially in the senior space, there's a lot of things that you need that they're holding on to pass down, or they're holding on because they have a lifetime of memories.
Mhm.
And how does that equate to the logistics of what needs to happen space wise? So as an adult child dealing with
Mhm.
aging parents and households and aging grandparents, and then having my own children and my own career, my own household that probably also, if we're being honest, has too much stuff, right? So that whole I know because I because I know kind of concept. But I've seen it. I've seen where there's a lot of stuff that you don't need to take with you or think that you're not taking it with you, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that you can get rid of that I think people don't realize that they can, or how to do that really to manage it.
And I agree with you. And I think that the hardest part is, I mean, I was just talking to somebody recently, literally just before we had this call, actually, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm so glad you're telling me this, because there's so much variety when it comes to what our parents, right, or what our grandparents want to do with their own personal items, right? Like, one example was, you know, I have all my stuff and I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to, what did one of my clients say one time? I'm leaving this house feet first, you know, like there's
I've
that
heard that a time or
concept,
two.
you know, where people are putting, you know, stair lifts into their home so they can manage it. Or maybe if they end up having health issues someday, they end up with like their bedroom in their dining room or something like that. Right. So there's that variety. And I have a lot of clients who have a lot of things. And I think that sometimes our identity gets wrapped up into our things. And then there's also this difficulty with, well, I, as your parent, right, you know, like my, you know, 7-year-old or 8-year-old, right, I want to gift you something. I want you to have some of my stuff. And then there's this kind of uncomfortable, sometimes unspoken, but it's better when it can be communicated from, you know, the adult child who's like, I have a house full of stuff right now, and I don't want all of this stuff. And so it's like, how do we have that conversation with people so that it's creating like a loving connection
Yes.
in the process, and not ending up with, I mean, I have actually seen it where it has had really negative effects on siblings, because then they're having to negotiate who gets the TV or this antique, or they're having to clear stuff out, and that costs a lot of money eventually. And so the 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 grandparents, the elderly people, right, our parents, right, if they're really proactive about saying, okay, here's what I want to gift you. Do you want it?
Yeah.
Right. And if not, that's okay. Like, let's have a connection still, but then I can start figuring out what to do with those items. And that's kind of where I'm at with some of my clients.
Yeah.
But then I have a lot, like, there's a big variety, right? There's those people who've held on to lots of things over the years. And then there's like, I'm going to just say my mom and dad, who she literally told me on the phone the other day, one of the things we're going to start working on is clearing out our basement so you don't have to worry about it ever. And I was like, thank you, mom.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. And like, I do want some of it, right? There's some like memories there, and there's some things that I hold on to. Like, we have a really cute little wood wheelbarrow that was passed down from my grandparents, right? And like, that's just a cool little item. But I leave so much space for that kind of stuff in my life, right? In my house.
Totally. Well, and that's what we find is really finding ourselves in the sandwich generation, right?
Yeah.
Where we've got, on one side we have our aging parents, on the other side we maybe have kids, or we have a full life of, activities and work, or maybe all those things. And so
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, like when all the stuff landed on my driveway, I'm going, great, right? Like, this is wonderful. I've got all this stuff, and then this stuff. And I mean, and honestly, I like things. Like, I have an appreciation for antiques and stuff like that. So, it could have been worse. But when it's fighting with the Legos on the floor, you, as an adult child, you're like, okay, how do we have this conversation? And so you've got, from the senior or from the parents' perspective, you have, this is my lifetime of memories in my household. And I want to share it with my children, or maybe they want it, or maybe my grandchildren want it. And maybe it's just memories that I'm not in a place to let go of yet because of,
Mhm.
my husband gave it to me and he's gone now and I'm having a hard time because all of these things are very much attached to our emotions and our memories psychologically. And
Yeah.
that's why every situation is so different. So you have somebody who has a hard time letting go of something because they haven't really worked through all of their grief process. And then
Yeah.
you have other people who are maybe wanting to hold on to items that were their kids in high school that
Mhm.
the kids just haven't come back for yet, right?
Mhm.
Myself, I had a Nancy Drew book collection that I left at my parents' house, my house, growing up in the basement. And my dad kept it and kept it and kept it until finally he got rid of it. And then later on, I was like, well, where's my Nancy Drew books, Dad?
Right.
Right? Like as adult children, we can't
Right.
expect that our parents are like a storage facility. But so that where do
Well,
we
and I
have
think you
that
have a good
balance?
point. And I think that's where like the communication piece comes in, and that hopefully this kind of process can be connecting where you're like,
Yes.
hey, mom, I love you. I would love to sit down with you in your basement for a couple hours, once a month or whatever, and help you
Yeah.
go through some of the things that you have, and we can decide what to do with it. Now, that definitely takes a commitment, but also it can be hopefully bonding instead of, disconnecting where you're like somebody mentioned to me the other day that it was a grandparent who had given away like an antique truck, like an actual car, but it wasn't running
Actual
anymore.
vehicle kind.
And then, yeah, and then their child was very mad about it, like for years that they had
Yeah.
given that away. So I think that communication, and I mean, that's what our job is about, right?
Mhm.
And that's what relationships are about, right? It's about how do I communicate this proactively and positively so that I create a beautiful memory that I can have with my parent as
Together.
they age and decrease the stress
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I think the hard part and what we find in talking about reverse mortgage, talking about home care, non-medical home care for seniors, talking about estate planning, talking about downsizing or right sizing,
Yeah.
talking about decluttering, all of that stuff. What it boils down to is a lot of times in families because of the dynamics, because of the grief process, because of past things in the relationships, and just because nobody wants to think about dying.
Nobody wants to
About
talk about it. I
nobody
don't want
wants to
to think
talk
about it.
about it.
Yeah.
And so if we're saying, yeah, we just should have
Mhm.
the conversation. It's like that, sure. But then how do we actually do that? And how
Yeah.
logistically it makes sense that we would go, okay, we're gonna do this and we're
Mhm.
gonna sort through all of this stuff. But
Mhm.
it again, like the situation is so different for everybody. And
Yeah.
it's such a consultative thing from like our perspective as
Yeah.
professionals,
Mhm.
but it's a very real, emotional, vulnerable, raw thing for the actual
Yeah.
family members that are going
Yeah.
through it. And I
Yeah.
think that as adult kids, like working with our moms or our dads or our grandparents or aunts or uncles, whoever, to
Mhm.
kind of help them through that because they don't want to bring it up always, and we don't want to bring
Yeah.
it up. And then you add
Yeah.
in the busyness of life that is happening from everybody's perspective, but juggling all the stuff and keeping all the plates in the air, and who has time to talk about the stuff? So kind of
Well,
having
and
some
I
of those
think you have a
streamlined.
good point, right? Who has time? But at the
Right.
same time, if
You're
then
gonna
you're
need the
waiting,
time if you
if
don't.
you put off the conversation, and I'm just going to be harsh here, right? If you put the conversation off, whether you're the aging parent or whether you're the adult child who's juggling kids and work and self-care and exercise and all the things that, tidying, keeping a house clean, that kind of stuff. If you put the conversation off, it gets worse. Like
Yes.
100% of the time
Snowballs.
with every single topic in the world, if you put the conversation off. And I mean, things can get to the point where now, okay, here I am. I'm juggling my own kids, my own job, my own house, my own everything. And now I have God forbid, something happens to my mom, and now I have to help her go to all of her doctor's appointments. I have to be there with her while she's in some sort of pain, right? And a lot of times that's also emotional pain as they're starting to face the end of life, right? And then I have my own set of emotions around that because it's difficult. And then now I'm having to make medical decisions. And now I have to figure out where they're going to live, right? Whether they're going to live in their dining room, like I've seen happen before,
Yes.
and who's going to take care of them, right? And how are they going to get around the house? And now we have all the stuff involved also. And it's like, don't put off the conversation, right? Because having the conversation can be done in this loving, kind way. Like, I want us to be really connected, and I want to be there for you in whatever way possible over the course of the next, however many years we have together. Mom, dad, right? Let's talk about it. Or, daughter, son, let's talk about it. How can we have this conversation, and how can we start moving towards a place where there's a little bit of freedom involved in not having as much stuff? And I think that was kind of the reason Ashlie and I wanted to start with this conversation, because, and I don't think we're going to jump into that part today, but this is just a sneak preview. She and I both really bonded over a couple of different books that we've read that have some suggestions, right? The one I have was the subtle art. Hold on, I have to
Gentle
remember.
Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Yeah.
Oh no, that was yours. Say yours again.
I'm sorry. The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning.
The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning.
Yeah, we might have.
Yeah. Is that what it is?
It is. There's a couple. It's been a while since I actually read it. It's more like you just kind of
Yeah.
you just put it into process, and then it's like a method, right?
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
several. There's
Okay.
several books.
We'll have to go through that.
Yeah.
Like in our
it's a
next
whole
call.
process.
And then the one I thought of was the life-changing magic of tidying up, which is the Japanese art of decluttering and organizing.
Yeah.
And I definitely just looked the name up because I was going to butcher it, but it's like a very similar process. And I think, I mean, like, we're real estate professionals, but also like there's a lot more that goes into a real estate transaction than just like, which home do you want to live in, and how much can we get for this house, and like, should we get a reverse mortgage or not, and what does it look like with our equity? Like, there's a lot more than that. And I think that conversation is what we want to start having together.
And I think that's a good jumping off point for us too, is like having the conversation is the main thing. And the first thing to like wrap our minds around, whether it's the adult child that's seeing this and having that, thinking about, yeah, you're right. Like, I should talk to my mom about this, or my dad about this.
Yeah.
Or you're a senior who's going, yeah, I do have a lot of things, and I don't really know which direction I want things to go when, life begins to happen. I think the conversation is the main thing. And then there's lots of different spots that we've found, right, through our own professional experiences with clients, and just in dealing with all this over the years, that there's a lot more to it. There's just what are your goals financially? Where do you want to live? Do you want to be closer to your grandkids? How much space do you need? Do you want
what do you already have for retirement, right? Because that makes a difference, right? How are, do you have to live on Social Security? Do you have a 401k? Like, what are those things doing for you? Do you have an annuity? What is a reverse mortgage? And I'm not going to go through that topic right now, but Ashlie and I are definitely working with a client about that, the reverse mortgage. And there's definitely a lot of fear around what that looks like. So if you do want to contact Ashlie and ask her just some real questions about if it's right for you, and what it looks like. Ashlie, how can people contact you?
I guess we'll just plug my info in down below on the.
Yeah, we can throw a link in the comments. Yep. And then I'll put my link tree into. I'm Heather O'Leary with eXp Realty, and Ashlie and I are really excited to have more conversation about what the later stages in life look like as it applies to real estate and mortgages and all things that create connection between adults and their aging parents. So have a good day. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.